All right, so in today's video, we're going to take a look at how to get a nice clean low end, and we're going to be exploring sidechaining to do that. So the technical definition of a sidechain is simply one sound or effect being triggered or acted upon by another sound and effect. So the classic way that you often hear this, especially in dance music, is to have the bass triggered by the kick drum. So since the kick and the bass typically share the same frequency spectrum in the low range, the idea here is to have the bass duck out real quick every time the kick cracks out, and then the bass recovers. That way you can have a lot of low end from your bass and with your kick, but at the moment the kick hits, the bass isn't covering up the kick, so you can still really hear it the way you want to, and it cuts through the mix, and also so the overall buildup isn't too much in that low end frequency spectrum. So let's get on into these techniques. All right, so we got some 808s and a sub bass going. And right now there is no side chain going. You can see the compressor dancing here, but it's not turned on yet. So the bass needs to be routed to a side chain source, which will be your kick. And that kind of depends on your plugin and your DAW, but it's not as complicated as it sounds. So if you're having trouble, just look up your specific DAW and the specific plugins that you're working with. But this is the idea, is every time the kick hits, the threshold dips down and ducks the bass out of the way a little bit. So let's go ahead and turn on this side chain on the bass and take a listen. So you'll notice with the side chain on that the kick is more clear and it's cutting through better. But you'll also notice that there's a little less of the sub bass going on. So I'm going to turn it off and on. So that's the classic way to do it, but I don't think it's the best way. So let's solo out the kick and the bass and take a listen again with the side chain on. And now if I turn it off, so the kick isn't cutting through as much, but the bass is a lot more clear. So let's explore a different way to do it. So here we're using an equalizer side chain to the kick instead of the compressor. So the compressor is ducking the entire sub bass out of the way, but this way we're only ducking the part of the bass spectrum where the kick is hitting. So here's our kick drum, and you can see with this 808, the lowest fundamental is just around 50 hertz, but there's a lot ringing out all the way up to around 150. So with the side chain going on here, what we've done is we put it somewhere in the middle around 80 hertz with a fairly wide Q, and it's ducking out dramatically every time the kick hits, but this lets the upper end of the bass still carry through the mix, and even the lower end of the sub bass is not being ducked out. Just basically the area where the kick occupies is being ducked out by the EQ sidechain. So let's engage this and take a listen. And we'll start with it off and we'll bring it on and go back and forth so you can hear the difference. And with the mix, I think that's a much more transparent way to get a clean low end via sidechain. It lets the rest of the bass shine through and you still get the kick cracking out the way you want it, and the low end is nice and clean and tight. I suggest sidechaining with an EQ instead of a compressor, and I think you're going to have a lot more transparency and clarity, and you won't compromise your bass sound so much. So, well, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you on the next one.